Karen Fitzgerald, and I'm the Jewish lay leader here at JBLM. And we can be found at the Main Post Chapel Annex and on Facebook at JBLM Jewish Communities. And links are also available on the First Core Chapel pages. And now I'd like to introduce Phil, who's going to go ahead and talk about this week's Torah portion, and then I'm going to follow up with the Haftorah.
Good afternoon, and have a good week to you all. I'm going to introduce a story that I saw on Aish.com this week that references our Torah portion. As you read this week, you'll see that there was some complaining going on amongst the people as they wandered through the desert. And they wanted something that other than manna to eat, and there's a whole story that goes along with that. So today, here's what I read from Aish.com in the actually youth portion. It goes like this. "All right," Alex shouted as he waved an open envelope back and forth. "What's up, Al?" his sister Leah asked. "Did you win the lottery or something?" "Almost as good," Alex said. It's my birthday card from Grandma." Alex and Leah could always count on Grandma Sarah sending a birthday card with a generous gift. This year was even more generous than usual. "All right," said Alex. "Now I can finally afford those professional grade hockey skates that I've been wanting over at the sporting goods store." See, Alex was in an after-school league for hockey, and with these skates, he could just imagine how fast he could skate and how quickly he could stop, turn, and shoot. As soon as he got open, he headed off to the store, and he got almost all the way to the sporting goods store when he came across another store that he hadn't seen before. On the front of the store, they had a huge sign said, "Giant Super Savings, everything inside, 99 cents. He was about to pass by, but the thought came to his mind, with this gift from Grandma and all my savings, I could get so much more stuff at this store than I could one pair of hockey skates. So in he went. He took the shopping cart and went up and down the aisles. Before he knew it, he had filled his cart halfway full of gum and candy bars, trinkets of all sizes and shapes, and he did a mental calculation then to see if he had how much money he would have left. "This is really great," he said. "I haven't even spent half my money yet." So he took his cart and began round two, taking keychains, soap that smelled like pizza, 3 different color shoe polishes. Now that would bring a smile to Leah's eyes because they knew that Alex hadn't shined a pair of shoes in forever. And for some reason, he didn't feel quite as excited as when the shopping spree began. But he pushed aside the feeling. Why shouldn't he be happy? After all, he was getting so much more than he had planned. The boy trooped on, undaunted, scooping up as many bargains as he could. He took a fish bowl, even though he didn't have a fish, a flashing dog collar for a dog he didn't own. Maybe I'll get one day. Alex trudged on and on, strangely feeling relieved as the cart finally filled up, signaling a light at the end of the tunnel. He got in line to pay, and the people in front of him were also packed with stuff. But despite their great bargains, nobody really looked so happy, at least not as happy as they did when they first walked into the store. Finally, Alex's turn came. He looked into the shopping cart and shook his head. Sure, it was a lot of stuff, but he had to admit to himself that out of all of it, there wasn't really anything he actually needed or even really wanted for that matter. Certainly not as much as the pro skates he had his heart set on for months. "Yes, son, pile her up on the counter. You're next," the lady at the cash register said with a bored half smile. Alex began to unload his bargains and his heart sunk. What am I doing, he thought to himself. He had gotten all caught up in the thrill of the chase, but now, thinking it over, he realized it was a big mistake. Well, asked the lady to the hesitating boy. I'm sorry, but I think I changed my mind. Don't worry, I'm going to put everything back. As soon as he pushed the cart away, he was surprised when the cashier, rather than getting mad, actually looked up and smiled at him. Good for you, she said with a wink. People just come here to buy for the sake of buying. Between you and me, it really is a bunch of junk, isn't it? Alex carefully put the stuff back, feeling his heart grow lighter along with the shopping cart. He'd go and get his skates after all. Something he really wanted and needed, and something that he almost let slide away. So here's a question that Aish asks us to consider. Our sages teach us that the ability to overcome and act contrary to one's impulse for the sake of a higher value is a unique human quality and a measure of one's spirituality. How and why is this so? Their answer? Animals act only according to impulse. If they are hungry, they eat. If they are angered, they attack. Something external may impede them, like a bigger animal that wants to eat the same thing that they do, but never will they refrain from eating just because they are, say, fasting that day in solidarity with their hungry and oppressed brothers across the globe. But God has granted us a unique, higher level of consciousness with the ability to choose to respond to higher values. To the extent that we tap into and act upon its dictates, instead of listening to our own animal impulses, we lift ourselves spiritually. Karen.
Thank you, Phil. You've definitely given us things to think about. Now, I'd like to do something different and talk about the Haftorah. The Haftorah is a section from the prophets that's read on Shabbat at the conclusion of the weekly Torah portion, as well as after the Torah readings on certain holidays and fast days. Now, the origin of the Haftorah readings are somewhat vague, and several theories have been suggested. The most common explanation is that in around 168 BCE, when the Jews were under the rule of Antiochus IV of Hanukkah infamy, they were forbidden to read from the Torah. The decree, however, was limited to the 5 books of Moses, so the sages instituted that a section of the prophets be read instead, usually an idea that was related to the Torah reading that should have been read that week. This custom stuck even after it became safe to read from the Torah again. Now, another explanation suggests that originally Jews would stay in the synagogue every day after the morning prayers and study sections from different parts of the Torah, one of them being the prophets. In financially trying times, when they could no longer afford this luxury of extra time spent in the synagogue, they cut it down to saying a few verses from the prophets in the prayer at one of the prayers at the end of the weekday service, but held on to the custom of reading a longer part of the prophets on Shabbat. And now another alternative explanation, offered by some more recent Jewish scholars, is that the Haftorah reading was instituted to combat the influence of those sects that view the Torah as consisting only of the 5 books of Moses. So certainly the Haftorah is read as far back as the 1st century CE, as the Talmud discusses how the Haftorahs were read before some of the early scholars of the Mishnah. Some accredit the establishment of the Haftorah reading to Ezra the scribe around 350 BCE. And now this week's Haftorah is Zechariah 2:14 to 4:7. Now the prophet Zechariah was among the Hebrews exiled to return to Zion when Cyrus the Great issued his decree of restoration. Enthusiastically, when they returned to the land, the people were soon disappointed. Enemy neighbors in Palestine made it difficult for them to lead a peaceful life and to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. The prophets Zechariah and Haggai began to offer encouragement and hope to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem, and hope to their fellow Hebrews to be strong in their faith in God. It was God who had ordained their return to the Holy Land, and God would enable them to rebuild the temple and renew the priesthood. The prophet Zechariah's messages were brought by him to the people, mainly in the form of powerful visions, including one of the golden temple menorah. And this is the link between the Haftorah and the Parsha, or this week's Torah portion, that is Zechariah's vision of the 7-branch menorah spoken of in the Parsha. Well, Shavua Tov, have a great week, and same time next week. Thank you.